I gotta say, every year it gets harder to get residence in New Zealand. Overall residence approvals have fallen by 3,700 between the months of April and September 2017. Less people are also applying, with only around 4,644 applicants for the same period, compared to 9,150 applicants in the 2016 year. With so many people getting declined due to stricter assessments, I think it's about time people got insight into my mind and what I believe are the best ways to increase your chances of succeeding in your application. So without further ado, here are my top 10 tips for getting SMC residence. Number 1, get a capable lawyer or advisor. If you feel confident about your skilled employment, then go ahead and submit your residence application yourself. The last thing I want is to discourage you from applying if in your heart of hearts you are convinced that you can win. However, I want to speak briefly about what we immigration lawyers do and how getting legal assistance can help make all the difference. Firstly, you should know it can take as much as 6 to 12 months for the immigration department to process your application. This is on top of the time it takes to prepare and present a strong file. We're talking massive files here, and not everyone has the time or luxury to spend hundreds of hours on file preparation. During these months while your file is under process, it can be very easy to stumble into difficulties. The skilled migrant category is an intricate piece of policy. Understanding topics such as whether your job is skilled, whether your qualification is recognised, and whether you can claim points for skilled work experience is to merely stand at the threshold on your journey to gaining residence. If you're serious about becoming an NZ resident, think about approaching a qualified lawyer to make sure your application is strategised and presented in a professional manner. The crux of a lawyer's role is to foresee potential issues in your case and close them before they emerge. Be careful about engaging dodgy immigration advisors who offer cheap services. I've heard stories of some advisors who only go so far as form filling, and believe me, you don't want to waste your hard-earned coin on something that can easily be done yourself. Number 2, choose the right job and industry. I recommend that you choose a profession that you're passionate about. Don't pick a career just because you were told it's the easiest way to residence in the future. A lot of students are told that they can get residence if they study business management at some school or another. Well, let me tell you something that your overseas agent failed to mention. Getting residence as a retail manager is one of the hardest paths. But how can this be? Well, it's quite simple. Most people who are applying are typically retail managers from small retail outlets, groceries, dairy, supermarkets, etc., etc. Therefore, Immigration New Zealand are tough on these applicants because let's be honest, do we really as a country need more managers to reside here permanently when there are already plenty of managers on temporary visas? If one manager gets his visa declined and is forced to leave, there is almost always another ready to take his place. So how do you, as a potential applicant, not fall into this conundrum? Well, if I were you, I would consider choosing a career that NZ actually needs, where there is a shortage of employees in the market. You can start by researching jobs that fall under the essential skills and demands lists. We have long-term and immediate skill shortage lists, as well as a skill shortage in the Canterbury region. Those applying under a trade or in one of the sciences have been known to be more successful than those applying as managers. Number 3, make sure you meet the points threshold. The skilled migrant category is a points-based system from which you can claim points for your employment, qualifications, work experience, age, and your partner's work and qualifications. An initial application called an expression of interest or an EOI is made to Immigration New Zealand. Candidates claiming a score of 160 points or more are automatically selected from the system fortnightly. Once selected, EOIs undergo a verification process and candidates are then issued an invitation to apply, following which a full application for residence must then be prepared and submitted. I recommend that you calculate your points now, so that if you do fall short of 160, you can start planning how to make up the rest of the points, whether it be through work or additional study. If you haven't seen my video, Points Calculator New Zealand Residence, then I suggest you check that out when you finish watching this video. I've broken down each and every point you may earn towards your SMC residence since the September 2017 changes. I'm quite proud of that video and I'm sure it will benefit you. A link to it will be at the end. Number 4, do well in your English language test. Honestly, how well your application performs starts with your English language ability. You probably know that you need an IELTS band score of 6.5 for your EOI to be accepted, but I want you to aim higher. Don't settle for the bare minimum. Immerse yourself into Kiwi life. Learn our words, our languages, our culture. Trust me, not only will it help you integrate into our society, but it will also improve your chances of getting residence by a ton. I say this because English is the medium in which your application is presented. Everyday business communication is conducted in English. If you want your immigration officer to take your case seriously, I suggest you work on your English writing skills. Take a look at these 2 examples. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that the one on the right is far more articulate and professional than the one on the left. If your English writing skills are poor, it will reflect badly on your technical skills and expertise. The last thing you want is to have your case officer question your skills because you lack basic grammar, spelling and punctuation. Number 5, research ANSCO description and core tasks for your job. 95% of the time, success or failure of your application will depend on whether you can show immigration that your job matches the ANSCO core tasks. When an applicant fails, it's mostly because immigration have taken away points for skilled employment. ANSCO stands for the Australian and New Zealand Standard Classification of Occupations. The ANSCO tries to convey what a job is all about. It lists a whole bunch of tasks expected of people in their roles. You can use the search bar on the ANSCO website, which I've linked in the description below to navigate to your role. If we search nurse, for instance, we're provided with a few results that match or are similar to the job we are looking for. You need to choose the occupation that most closely resembles the job you're working in. We'll click on Registered Nurses, which takes us to the unit group page. This provides us with heaps of useful information. We have the occupation description, which briefly describes what a nurse does. We're given the qualification required to undertake the role, then there's the skill level, and most importantly, the core tasks. As we can see, there are 6 tasks that all qualified nurses are expected to undertake. Whatever your job is, if you can prove to immigration that you are performing all the ANSCO tasks, you'll be considered skilled to be awarded those priceless 50 skilled employment points. Number 6, identify any differences between your position and the ANSCO core tasks. Once you've found your ANSCO occupation, it's time to look at your job description and pinpoint any differences between your day-to-day tasks and those found in the ANSCO. Let's look at the ANSCO title for a retail manager. Now, your job description might include duties regarding stock, operating the till, dealing with supplies and supervising staff. Those tasks are fine, but on their own, they are more befitting of a supervisor than a full-fledged manager. But Richie, what if I'm lacking some vital tasks in my job description? Hey, that's okay. Talk to your employer about expanding your role to incorporate more duties that are found in the ANSCO. Tasks like determining product mix, which is to introduce new products and suppliers to your store, is a managerial component that is vital to an immigration officer approving your residence as a retail manager. Essentially, the more ANSCO core tasks that you are fulfilling, the stronger your odds are at getting residence. Ideally, you want to be completing all the ANSCO core tasks, because lacking even one of them exposes you to a declined application. Number 7, be sure your employer is willing to support you. This should go without saying, but you need your employer's support throughout your application. This can include anything from being paid the minimum income threshold, to making sure your employer is willing to credit your skill and ability when he or she is responding to immigration's inquiries. If your employer should answer your immigration officer in a way that diminishes the level of your responsibility, it can be difficult to overturn those statements. Sometimes this can be done without the employer even realising it. From there, it can be an uphill battle with immigration. The employer may try to correct his prior statements, but the department generally takes the first statement from the employer as true, and anything which follows as inconsistent information. So it's important that both you and your employer are on the same page about what your job entails from the beginning. Number 8, understand your company's organisation structure. The immigration department likes to find ways of taking away your responsibilities and passing them over to more senior staff within your organisation. For instance, if your employer is attending to the monthly budgets when you should be responsible for that duty, immigration will raise a concern that you are not performing an important ANSCO task, and that can lead to a decline. If you are searching for a job with the intention to apply for residence, tread carefully when considering a position within a franchise. If you're employed in a franchise business, know that it can be much harder for your residence to be approved because immigration will scrutinise the franchise agreement and determine the level of organisation and control that is vested in you compared to what is retained by the franchise, head office and any other management hierarchy within the business. This is particularly the case where there are specialist purchasing and marketing teams performing ANSCO tasks that you alone should be responsible for. Make sure during your employment interview to ask your employer about the organisation structure. Number 9. Evidence, evidence and more evidence. After submitting your EOI and receiving your invitation to apply, you then have 4 months to submit your residence application. Now you can do what most people do and provide the bare necessities like certified copies of your birth certificate, your passports, your employment contract, etc, etc. You could probably submit your file very fast, but what you ought to be doing is taking the time to prepare robust evidence showing completion of each of the ANSCO core tasks. For example, if you're applying as a personal assistant, you can provide copies of email correspondence between you and your other employees, which goes to show that you are liaising with other staff. Immigration won't necessarily accept statements from you or your lawyer about your role without hard physical evidence to back it up. Also, how your evidence looks can be just as important, if not more, than the content itself. So when preparing your evidence, focus on presentation and keep it looking professional. Number 10. Prepare for INZ inquiries. Once a case officer has been assigned to your case, they'll start making inquiries. Immigration can ask anything, but usually they'll email your employer a questionnaire about your role and responsibilities. They may also send a separate questionnaire for you to fill out and then compare and contrast the two to see if there are any inconsistencies between the answers. Immigration have been known to conduct telephone interviews, as well as making site visits and questioning you at your place of employment. All I can say is, be prepared. Answer them by referring back to the evidence you should have already provided with your application. And those are my top 10 tips for achieving SMC residence. For more content, share and subscribe. Enjoy life, work hard, don't take shortcuts, and you'll make it. Peace.